With the victory in the mining sector and the knowledge and experience gained in pipelines, Carrier Sekani is now turning its attention to a growing problem in Western Canada, the mountain pine beetle. By 2012, it's estimated that the mountain pine beetle will have killed enough trees in the province of BC to fill an area roughly the size of Ireland. Warmer winters have allowed the beetle to survive and thrive, turning the landscape red with dead trees, and the epidemic is having serious impacts on First Nations.
What kind of impacts do this additional harvesting gives to the migrating animals such as the moose and all the animal wildlife that we use for our traditional diets? And also I think it affects all the berries and the things and the medicines that we normally utilize. We have to go to different places in order to harvest those things. And that was sort of an immediate concern. It was more of a cultural impact concern that we had.
So we really got to start managing for the young trees that have been attacked.
Terry Teegee is the former forestry analyst for the Carrier Sekani Tribal Council, and now as the forestry coordinator for the Takla First Nation. Terry is on the front lines in the fight against the mountain pine beetle. With the acres of dying trees increasing, the federal and BC governments proposed solutions to deal with the problem, but they did not include First Nations. Carrier Sekani chiefs then engaged in a huge organizational process with other BC chiefs to ensure that the needs and voices of their people were heard before government funds were allocated.
Within the proposal, there was a First Nations component that was never endorsed by a First Nation, that was not written by a First Nation. And this was brought forward by one of the chiefs of the Carrier Sekani Tribal Council. So that being said, the CSTC got the initiative to get other nations together, and we had a big meeting of our own, and that was in September 20th of 2005, where this whole issue of the mountain pine beetle came to a head, and we started talking about what to do about the mountain pine beetle within our traditional territories.
Leonard Thomas is the Economic Development Officer for Nakasley First Nation near Fort St. James and its former chief. He's also president of the BC First Nations Forestry Council, which was formed as a result of First Nations coming together back in 2005.
What came out of it is the First Nation Forestry Council is the advocate of making sure that the commitments that made by the province to the First Nations being affected are looked after. It's been a challenge, but I think by us being involved, I think we have a direct say as to how I think areas can be reharvested or reforested, and the type of species I think that will help the growth of a better forestry down the road.
The war on the mountain pine beetle isn't one people can win. Only nature and colder winters can take care of that. And the member nations of the Carrier Sekani Tribal Council accept that. However, they still consider the process to be an unqualified success in environmental governance, after bringing together nearly 100 First Nations to create a stable institution in the First Nations Forestry Council, getting recognized by 2 levels of government and putting their administrative capacity to work.
The capacity I'm talking about is we had a natural resource director at the Carrier Sekani Tribal Council. We had a communications person, and we got those resources together. We hired some more people to start this whole mountain pine beetle working group. And it was through all of the chiefs out of the 85 nations that showed up to the September 20th meeting that the whole mountain pine beetle working group started. And it's through those initiatives and and the draft of the action plan at those meetings that we really started to become a voice to be reckoned with by not only the provincial government but the federal government.
Whether it's the trees affected by the mountain pine beetle, or the land threatened by pipelines, or the water polluted by mining, It's a wise voice that reminds us what is needed for the betterment of both the people and the environment.
Education. Research, I guess. Have our people involved.
The people of our communities must come together. It might be to conduct research or to strengthen administrative capacity. It could be while implementing any or all of the 7 elements of successful environmental governance. It must be done with one united voice to protect our environment from the threats it's now facing.
We're one of the people, some of the people that have to say, this has got to stop.
There's some things that we cannot bring back, but I think people have to work together in order to save what's out there for our future generation.
I guess the number one lesson that other First Nations can learn is the fact that we're one nation, and the fact is that when we come together, we have a strong voice.
You should never talk about the land in whatever you do, because you don't own it. It owns you.
The environment seems to be in vogue right now, whereas with First Nations, the environment was always in vogue, and it always will be in vogue.